Good evening, and welcome back to Election Night in America 2024. Tonight, incumbent President Joe Biden is running for re-election against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. If DeSantis wins, he will be the first challenger since Bill Clinton in 1992 to unseat an incumbent president. We are now going to look at our swing state polls. These polls should give you a good idea of who is favored to win the key states that are going to decide tonight's outcome. Ron DeSantis is favored in both Florida and Georgia, whereas Joe Biden has the lead in Pennsylvania and Arizona. If DeSantis were to win Georgia, it would be considered a flip, because Joe Biden won it in 2020. Americans are roughly split in half between whether the country is going in the right or wrong direction, with around half of Americans saying both of those things. Ron DeSantis, who is going to be abbreviated as RDS throughout this election night, has a 50% unfavorability rating compared to a 45% favorability rating. These are better than the previous Republican nominee, Donald Trump's, but they're still not very good for DeSantis, and these could come to haunt him in the future. Joe Biden's a little bit more popular, but he's not ridiculously popular. 52% of Americans view him favorably compared to 44% who say they have an unfavorable view of the president. 39% of voters said the economy was their most important issue, 27% said healthcare was the most important issue, 22% race in America said race in America was the most important issue, and 12% said that other issues were most important to them. And the polls have just closed in our first states, most notably Georgia and South Carolina. And we can now project this as our first call of the evening, and it's that Joe Biden is going to win the state of Vermont. 3 electoral votes here, this is not a surprise. And we now are going to project that Indiana will go for Ron DeSantis. The polls on the eastern end of the state actually closed an hour ago, but we're getting ready to call it right now, as Kentucky as well. Kentucky 8 electoral votes going for Governor DeSantis. In the state of Georgia, we have 16 electoral votes at stake in this key battleground. Biden is currently losing by around 18.5%, but that's only with 10% of the vote, and these are more rural counties that are reporting. In South Carolina, it's kind of the opposite, where we have the Democratic areas of the state coming in first, where DeSantis is behind by around 22%, with just over a tenth of the vote in. And then in Virginia, Ron DeSantis does have a very early lead here, but Joe Biden is expected to catch up and win the state when all is said and done. So, 19 electoral votes for Ron DeSantis, 3 for Joe Biden. We still have 3 states, most notably Georgia, that are too close to call. And it's now 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and we have some major poll closings, including the swing state of North Carolina, which has been heavily contested throughout this election season. Nearly everyone rates this race as a toss-up, except for Lee and Tossa, which has it as safety for whatever reason, but this state could determine who wins tonight. In Virginia, we have 13 electoral votes at stake here, and Joe Biden is going to win here. The state has been trending to the left rapidly over the past 2 decades, and Joe Biden will win Virginia. Now, going over to just taking a look at the vote here, Joe Biden's ahead by around 5 2/3 right now with 70% of the vote, and that lead is only going to grow when you think about it. But that's a strong showing in Virginia for Joe Biden, and the Democrats are hopeful that those bellwether counties in Virginia that went for Biden vote similarly to these swing states that are still in contention. However, we can project that Virginia's more conservative neighbor, actually far more conservative neighbor, West Virginia, which did lose an electoral vote due to the census, 4 electoral votes in West Virginia, they will go all for Ron DeSantis. In North Carolina, as expected, we cannot make a projection there, but we can report that Joe Biden has a lead in the state, and then in Ohio, Joe Biden has a big lead in Ohio early on, but these votes are mostly only coming in from Cleveland, which is a very Democratic area of the state. So, with 23 electoral votes to DeSantis and 16 for Joe Biden, it's still very early in the night. This evening, in this election night, is still very young, but we're going to have to see as these 8 p.m. poll closings approach. We have some key swing states that are about to close. And it's now 8 p.m., and we just got our biggest batch of poll closings, including the swing states of Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Maine's 2nd Congressional District, and Ron DeSantis' home state of Florida. So, in Connecticut, 7 electoral votes for Joe Biden. Connecticut goes for the president. And in Delaware, his home state, 3 electoral votes for President Biden. 19 in Illinois, they lost an electoral vote due to the census. Joe Biden will carry the state of Illinois. In Maine, 2 of their 4 electoral votes are ready to call, but we're also going to give the 1st district, which is the very Democratic district, Joe Biden. So 3 of Maine's 4 electoral votes have gone to the president. And in Maryland, 10 electoral votes for the President of the United States. In Massachusetts, 11 electoral votes for President Biden. 14 in New Jersey will all go for President Biden. And Joe Biden has created the District of Columbia. As expected, this is the bluest state in the Union. And, of course, 3 electoral votes for Joe Biden there. In South Carolina, with 9 electoral votes at stake there, this was too early to call an hour ago. Polls have been closed for a little over an hour. South Carolina will go for Ron DeSantis. Right now, he has around a 4.5% lead, but that lead is only going to grow. And with 85% of the vote in DeSantis, when all is said and done, is expected to win the state by 7 or 8%. Now in Alabama, 9 electoral votes. They were expected to lose one due to the census. They did not. 9 electoral votes in Alabama for DeSantis, 6 in Mississippi. He's also got 10 in the state of Missouri, all going for him. In Oklahoma, 7 electoral votes for the governor, as well as in Tennessee, where we have 11 electoral votes reporting from this state, and we're going to give them to Ron DeSantis early on. And in DeSantis' home state, he's currently trailing the president. 30 electoral votes at stake here. There's essentially no path for DeSantis. If he does not win his home state, he has to carry it, and right now he is losing. In Maine's 2nd congressional district, with 90% of the vote in, DeSantis has a very early lead there. We'll keep you posted on that district. This is a district that's been very elastic over the years. We're going to have to see where it goes at the end of the evening. In New Hampshire, with around a third of the vote in, DeSantis currently losing around 18% to Joe Biden there. In Pennsylvania, Joe Biden has a very early lead, but these votes are mostly coming in from areas surrounding Philadelphia. 89 electoral votes for Joe Biden, 74 for Governor Ron DeSantis. And again, the night is still very young. We still really don't know who's going to win, but right now both camps feel very optimistic about where they are at this point in time. In Arkansas, the polls have just closed there, and as expected, we can project Arkansas will go for Governor Ron DeSantis. 6 electoral votes here, no surprise. So the electoral vote gap is only 9. Only 9 electoral votes separate the president and Governor DeSantis. And it is now 9 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, 6 p.m. on the West Coast. We've got our key swing states closing, especially the Rust Belt, or the Upper Rust Belt, as well as Texas and Arizona. Now, in New Hampshire, 4 electoral votes here. These will all go for Joe Biden. 4 electoral votes this state. This was our first toss-up state that has that we can project a winner here. So when you look at the swing state map, Joe Biden is going to win New Hampshire. That's a good sign for him. He's ahead by around 6 right now, or he's ahead by around 10. A big batch of votes just came in, so a very solid showing for Joe Biden in New Hampshire. That's a good sign for his prospects. Now in Colorado, this is another good sign. This is not really a swing state, but it's a state that the Republicans were hoping they could narrow up from 2020. That does not look like it's happening. In Minnesota, this state was expected to lose an electoral vote due to the census, but it did not end up losing an electoral vote. In fact, it kept its current electoral vote count 10, and it's going to reward its electoral votes to Joe Biden. This is this is the most liberal state in the Rust Belt, and they're going to give their electoral votes to Joe Biden. In New Mexico, 5 electoral votes here. DeSantis actually made a play for this back in August and September, but he kind of gave up on it as the election started really ramping up. So New Mexico, no surprise here, going for Joe Biden, but DeSantis would have liked to have that one. In New York, 28 electoral votes. They were really close to actually keeping their 29 electoral votes. They were around 89 voters away, or 89 census respondents away from getting to that 29 threshold, but nevertheless, Joe Biden wins 28 electoral votes in the state easily. In Maine's 2nd congressional district, this is a big call for DeSantis. This is not really a bellwether. It's not really a must-win for either candidate, but DeSantis winning it, he's got to feel good about that. And in Louisiana, 8 electoral votes here. Going to go for Ron DeSantis, as well as Nebraska. 4 of their 5 electoral votes will go for the governor. And then in the state of North Dakota, 3 electoral votes there, and we just called North Dakota. We can also call South Dakota for the governor. And then, of course, the state that we're not sure if it exists or not. Probably doesn't, but I don't want to get fired. Hey. Okay, it was a joke. Please. FBI. It's okay. 3 electoral votes in Wyoming going to go for Ron DeSantis. Totally real state. Now, in Arizona, this was another state that was expected to gain electoral vote due to the census, did not. 11 electoral votes, Joe Biden has the lead there. And in Kansas, 6 electoral votes in this state. Joe Biden has an early lead, but don't let that deceive you. These are mostly just Democratic areas. In Michigan, 15 electoral votes at stake here. Ron DeSantis has the early lead here. In the 2nd congressional district in Nebraska, this district was, again, it's pretty gerrymandered to favor the Republicans. It was actually originally gerrymandered to favor the Republicans, but it was struck down by the court, so it's mostly going to look like what it did in 2020. This is a Democratic-leaning district. Joe Biden has the lead here. In Texas, 40 electoral votes in the state of Texas, and with 8% of the vote in, Joe Biden has the lead here, but it's very early on. In Wisconsin, 10 electoral votes at stake, this critical swing state. This was one of the closest states in 2020. It's going to be really close again. Right now, Joe Biden has the lead there. 144 electoral votes for the president, 102 for Ron DeSantis. Joe Biden has the lead right now. And it's now 10 o'clock on the East Coast, or 10 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, 7 o'clock p.m. on the Pacific coast. And we have some critical poll closings, especially for these Senate races, especially in Nevada and Montana. And Nevada right now is probably the closest state that's closing its polls right now. And we've got some major news from Michigan. 15 electoral votes. Joe Biden will carry the state. This is another talk-up state that Biden won. He was narrowly ahead in the polls here. He had a 6-point lead in the polls, but the polls in the state tend to underestimate the Republicans. So DeSantis thought he had a chance here, but it's going to go for Joe Biden right now with around 3/4 of the vote, and he's ahead by over 8%. And in Nebraska's 2nd district, as expected, 1 electoral vote dropping for Joe Biden here. He's going to win this by around 13. In Kansas, 6 electoral votes. This was a state that we could not call earlier on, but Ron DeSantis winning Kansas, 6 electoral votes there, with around 6% of the vote in. He's going to only grow his lead. And in Montana, this state gained electoral vote due to the census, and all 4 of their electoral votes are going to go for Ron DeSantis. And then in Utah, 6 electoral votes from this state. DeSantis doing a lot better than Trump early on here. In Iowa, it's currently too early to call, but these are mostly just Democratic areas reporting, and we're expecting to call this for the Republicans later on. And then in Nevada, 6 electoral votes. It's a very early lead for Ron DeSantis, but these are mostly just Republican areas reporting. 160 electoral votes for Joe Biden, 118 for Ron DeSantis, and Rick Scott is actually outrunning DeSantis in Florida, most notably. Rick Scott just won his Senate race there. He ended up defeating Stephanie Murphy there. In DeSantis, we haven't called Florida for him just yet, but he's leading there. And it's now 11 o'clock on the East Coast. We've got some major projections to make. First of all, Pennsylvania. Joe Biden was born in Scranton. He, the place he was born, is going to deliver the state to him. Lackawanna County, a key part of his coalition in Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes there. And Joe Biden's going to win Pennsylvania. And this is a key. This was the bellwether of this election. People were saying whoever won Pennsylvania was going to win the election. Well, Pennsylvania's made its decision clear, and they're going to vote, and they're going to go for Joe Biden this time. And we're going to have to see what DeSantis can do. But right now, that is great news for the Democrats. They are very happy, but you hear Pennsylvania is going to stay in the Democratic column and potentially even improving for Joe Biden in 2024. In California, this state lost an electoral vote due to the census. 54 electoral votes in California, 4 in Hawaii, 8 in Oregon. Oregon gained electoral vote due to the census, and then Washington, 12 electoral votes, all for Joe Biden. Now in Ohio, this is a key state for Ron DeSantis. He could not win without it. 17 electoral votes. DeSantis will win Ohio right now. He's ahead by only around 2.5%, but the remaining votes are very Republican, so DeSantis could expand that margin by the end of the night. He's also going to win Idaho, as expected, 4 electoral votes there. So Joe Biden is closing in on that 270 mark. He just needs 12 more electoral votes, which he can do by essentially just winning. It depends on the state, but if he wins 1 or 2 more states, it's over for Ron DeSantis. So DeSantis needs to win nearly all of these yellow states, and right now, just not looking that way. It's now 12:19 a.m. on the East Coast. Please ignore the picture of Donald Trump. Pretend it's Ron DeSantis. And we're going to project Georgia will go for Joe Biden at this hour. 16 electoral votes here. This is critical. The suburbs deliver the state to Joe Biden. With that, we can project, once we show you this, that Joe Biden has won the election. CNN can project that Joe Biden is going to win the 2024 presidential election. He is 81 years old. He's just been re-elected president. Iowa, on a separate note, Iowa will go for Ron DeSantis, but right now he could not care any less about that because he's about to concede this race to President Biden, and Joe Biden's going to speak soon. Ron DeSantis right now only at 145 electoral votes, but that could increase as we call more yellow states. So we do have a projection. The polls just closed in Alaska. We do have a projection from Wisconsin. This is a pickup for Ron DeSantis. He's going to win the state of Wisconsin by just a little bit. He's going to win it by only around 0.3, and he's ahead, but the remaining areas do have a Republican tilt to them, so Ron DeSantis is going to win Wisconsin by just a couple percentage point, or by just under a percentage point. In Florida, his home state, we waited a long time to call this, but he's going to win it anyways with 95% of the vote, and we can project Ron DeSantis will win Florida. And then in Texas, 40 electoral votes. These are some key calls DeSantis would have liked to have earlier in the night, but right now it's just too little, too late for the governor. He's going to win Texas by around 2.5. In Alaska, 3 electoral votes, as you could expect, the state going for Ron DeSantis, and 228 electoral votes for Governor DeSantis, 274 for Joe Biden. and 3 states have yet to be called. Those are the Sunbelt states of Nevada, Arizona, and North Carolina. It's now 2:49 a.m. on the East Coast, and we can project. We have a major projection to make into Nevada. 6 electoral votes going for Joe Biden. There was a lot of hype for DeSantis here. He campaigned here a lot, but Nevada is going to fall for Joe Biden this time around. However, he will carry the state of Arizona. This is his second pickup of the night. He's going to win Arizona's 11 electoral votes, and with that, he is going to be up in electoral votes with 98% of the vote, and DeSantis leading here by around 1.27%. And North Carolina, 16 electoral votes. They again won't do the census, and he's also going to carry North Carolina. This is going to end up being one of the closest states tonight. But with that, we've called every state, with North Carolina going for DeSantis with just 3% of the vote out. The path for Biden, North Carolina has been foreclosed, and Ron DeSantis has won North Carolina. But it does not matter because Joe Biden has won this election with 281 electoral votes on his side, 255 for Ron DeSantis. DeSantis ended up improving on Trump's margin, but he is he's not going to win this election either way. So Joe Biden has been reelected president. Now, I did make this county map. I debated showing county results for each state. For my next few election nights, I'm going to do that. But for right now, I'll just show you this county map. If you want to pause the video, look at the counties, go ahead. My election junkies, and I'm election junkie. I could talk with this all day, but just some highlights. DeSantis did pretty well in his home state of Florida, as you can see. He did flip Pinellas County. He flipped Seminole County as well. He made Duval narrow up, so he did pretty well in Florida, but unfortunately for him, his success in Florida did not translate. Joe Biden flipped a few counties in California. And yeah, that's basically it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, I just lost my voice for a second. If you enjoyed, please do leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.